Okay, we're back to do this again, another comparison video, because this one has been requested a lot. I've got the Apple Watch Ultra and the Garmin Epix Pro, and this is the 51mm form factor, the bigger one. And between these two watches and all of the videos I've made, these two have definitely received the most questions. Which one should I buy? Should I get the Apple Watch or the Epix? So in this video today, I want to talk about 5 different factors that you should take into account when you're making a decision between these two watches. And I boiled it down to 5 major differences, because there's a lot of differences, but I think these 5 differences are the most important. And just as a reminder, I've already reviewed both of these watches at length. I think my Apple Watch Ultra video is 30 minutes long. So if you want to learn the ins and outs about both of these watches, go check out their dedicated review videos on my channel instead of watching this video. Moving right into it, let's talk about what these two have in common. Both of these watches have excellent displays. Both have big, bright, AMOLED touch-enabled displays. The Apple Watch Ultras is a tiny bit brighter than the Epix Pros, but they're both really good. I have no issues with the displays. I can read them out in direct sunlight in just about any light condition. Another thing these two have in common is excellent GPS accuracy with dual band or multi-band GPS or GNSS enabled chipsets on both devices. And in my testing, both of these watches also have excellent heart rate sensors. Of course, that's my testing. Your mileage may vary. And when it comes to the build and design of both watches, of course, they look different. One's square and one's round, but they're both very durable devices. They're made out of titanium, they've got sapphire lenses, and they will take a beating. And when it comes to the smartwatch kind of features, both have a lot in common there as well, with things like phone notification support. Both can support playback for music from sources like Spotify or Amazon Music, and there are some differences there as well, but we'll cover that later in this video. With all of those similarities out of the way, let's dive into the first and major thing that you have to consider when you're looking at these two watches, and it's whether or not you own an iPhone. This one's kind of a no-brainer, and I think everyone knows that the Apple Watch Ultra only works on iOS devices or iPhones. It doesn't work with Android devices. That's the first thing to consider. Let's move on. The second thing to consider is going to be, do you need a cellular connection? The cellular connection on the Apple Watch Ultra, if you decide to enable it, on my plan is about $10 a month, and that's going to vary with whatever carrier you're on. I'm on Verizon, and this will enable you to take phone calls right on your wrist as if it was a cell phone without having your phone nearby. You can also send text messages and receive text messages. You can stream music from Spotify or Apple Music or Apple Podcasts. You can check your email. And you can do a whole lot more with the cellular connection because you have access to the entire internet without your phone being nearby. And on top of all that, you have access to Apple's App Store with thousands of third-party apps that can leverage this connection as well. When it comes to the Garmin Epix Pro, on the other hand, this watch does not offer a cellular connection. If you want to see text messages and see your weather and things like that, you will need your phone nearby to leverage its connection. In fact, Garmin doesn't even make a cellular enabled watch anymore. A couple of years ago, they came out with the Garmin Forerunner 945 LTE, which was cellular, but not the way you would think. It was more of a SOS or an emergency kind of cellular and not really for recreation, but it did have it. And ever since then, they haven't made another one, which is kind of strange. Hopefully in the near future, but yeah, there's no cellular on the Garmin Epix Pro. There is on the Apple Watch Ultra. Moving right into the third topic I want to talk about in this video, that's a pretty big factor, and it kind of covers a lot of things, is the out-of-box experience. The Garmin Epix Pro comes with a whole bunch of tools pre-installed and ready to go out of the box to help monitor your wellness and fitness goals. So you got your sleep tracking on here, your stress level tracking, your HRV status, training readiness, fitness levels with estimated VO2 max, and a whole bunch of other tools like body battery, which gives you an idea of how much energy you have left throughout the day. The user interface on the Garmin Epix Pro also prioritizes all of this data, and it's really the first thing you're gonna look at when you stare down at your watch. When it comes to the Apple Watch Ultra, on the other hand, it's a little bit different because it does track all of your metrics like your estimated VO2 max, your sleep tracking, all throughout the day, your HRV, things like that. But the data it collects is somewhat scattered throughout the interface, within Apple Health and Fitness, in the Activity app, and it's not all in one spot and kind of hard to find, to be honest. Apple tends to rely on third-party app developers like Athletic or Elite HRV, for example, to take advantage of all this data and generate actionable graphs and data for the user to make sense of all of it. I think ultimately, if you just want to take your watch out of the box and start using it for health and fitness goals, the Garmin tends to offer more right away, while the Apple can do just about everything the Garmin can do. It just takes more customization and more apps to accomplish the same thing. The fourth thing you want to consider when you're making this decision is the offline maps and navigation experience. And this is kind of confusing. So on the Apple Watch Ultra, it's gotten a lot better. When the Apple Watch Ultra came out, there wasn't a lot in terms of mapping and navigation without downloading a third-party app. However, Apple just released Apple Watch OS 10 that'll be rolling out soon, and in that is a whole new mapping experience within Apple Maps that adds topo mapping and navigation and trailhead markers and all kinds of interesting stuff, and I have a whole video about that, and it has gotten a lot better. However, even with all of these improvements, the mapping and navigation on the Garmin Epix Pro is still superior in a lot of ways. For example, the Apple Watch Ultra still requires your phone on you in order to leverage the offline mapping at the time of filming this video. That might change, I'm not sure. But because of that, you need your phone on you when you're out in the field doing your activities in order to have offline maps without a cellular connection. On the Garmin Epix Pro, you have a map of the entire country on your wrist, and it's a really detailed map with a ton of information that needs no outside information. It doesn't need an internet connection, it doesn't need Wi-Fi, it doesn't need your phone nearby. It's all stored inside the watch, which is really powerful. The Garmin Epix Pro maps also feature on-demand routing. So if you're on one mountain peak and you want to get to another mountain peak, you can simply navigate using your watch, find where you want to go, and get turn-by-turn directions on roads or trails in real time without needing to pull out your phone and generate a course on your phone. You can do it all right on your wrist. And another really cool feature in the maps on the Garmin is that you can return back to start by routing yourself back to the beginning of your activity. The Apple Watch Ultra, on the other hand, does have a few cool tricks up its sleeve when it comes to navigation and mapping. They implemented this new trailhead feature, so on the map on your watch, you can tap on a trailhead and get a little description of what the trail's like, how hard it is, how much elevation gain there is, whether or not it's friendly for kids, and there's a bunch of information there, and I do like that feature quite a bit, but I still will give the win when it comes to mapping and navigation to the Garmin Epix Pro just because of how many features and how useful it is in Garmin's history with mapping. And one more thing when it comes to mapping and navigation that I really appreciate is that on the Garmin, when you're out in an activity on a trail run or a hike, you can simply scroll through your data pages and get to a map, and you can see where you are or where your route is taking you. Now on the Apple Watch, in order to get to your map when you're in an activity, if you're doing a trail run and looking at your distance and stuff, you can't just simply scroll to a map page that's within the workout app. You have to actually leave the workout app and then go into the Apple Maps app to get that map data, which is kind of cumbersome, and it takes too many taps and clicks to do that. In my opinion, when I'm trail running or something like that, I'd love it just to be built right into the workout app instead of a different app. And that's what Garmin does, and maybe I'm just used to that, but it's much more useful. I should also mention that on the Apple Watch Ultra, because of the amazing app store and third-party developers, you're not stuck with just Apple Maps on this watch. You can go out and download something like Work Outdoors or Gaia GPS, which are third-party apps which do have really good mapping baked right into the app, and you don't need to swap around between various apps in order to get the data, but it is an additional expense on top of buying the watch. And that goes back to that out-of-box experience we just talked about. Whether or not you want to deal with apps or you just want it all baked in, that's really up to you to decide. Moving right along into the fifth thing you're going to want to consider when you're making a decision between these two watches, and it took me long enough to get to this point: battery life. I think we all know battery life is a big deal, and there's a pretty large difference between these two watches. If you want the absolute best battery life, the Garmin Epix Pro in the 51mm form factor is gonna be the way to go. You can be away from a charger in normal day-to-day activities and use your watch for up to about a month or 31 days. When it comes to the Apple Watch Ultra, on the other hand, this watch will need to be charged every 2 to 3 days. So you're talking about a month on the Garmin Epix Pro 51mm shorter, or about 2 to 3 days on the Apple Watch Ultra. And that's a huge difference. Yes, they're very different. One has a cell phone built into it, but if you're just really interested in battery life, the Epix Pro is going to be the way to go. When it comes to battery life and a GPS activity like a run or a ride, it's a similar story there as well. And I've actually run a couple of ultra marathons with the Apple Watch Ultra on my wrist, and while it did survive a 50K and a 50 miler, I don't think it's likely to survive something like a 100-mile ultra marathon. I know not everyone's running those out there, but it is something to consider if you do plan on doing that sometime in the future. In my personal testing on the Apple Watch Ultra in a GPS activity, I'd say the most you're gonna get out of this watch is about 17 hours of tracking a GPS activity, and that's with low power mode turned on. You can extend this battery life further in a GPS activity if you turn on the setting to reduce your GPS and heart rate accuracy. It'll sample it less often. However, that does take a pretty big hit to accuracy if that's something you're interested in. But if you had to do it in a pinch, you can. On the other hand, the Garmin Epix Pro 51mm can last up to 82 hours in a GPS activity, or 62 hours with increased accuracy. So there's quite a difference there. At the beginning of this video, I told you there were 5 things to consider when you're making this decision, but I want to throw one more in. Number 6. I'm not going to put that in the title because 5 sounds better. The flashlight. So on the Garmin Epix Pro and the Fenix 7 and a couple of other watches, you get this really handy built-in flashlight. And when this watch came out, I thought this was a gimmick and something I would never ever use. Why would they put a flashlight on a watch? Guess what? I use this just about every day I'm wearing this watch. For example, you're up in the middle of the night to get some water, you don't want to wake everybody up, you get a flashlight on your wrist, you can find your way. You drop your keys in your car, my kid drops his toy under the couch, I can find it using the flashlight that's right on my wrist without even needing my phone on me, without taking out a little, everyday carry flashlight. It's right there on my wrist. And I find this to be so valuable, and when I'm testing other watches, I'm always clicking the button wishing I had the flashlight on me. Now the Apple Watch Ultra, it does have a very bright display. So in a pinch, you can use the flashlight mode by swiping up in the menu and turning on a bright white background, which does, it can get you around if you need to, but it pales in comparison to an actual LED flashlight built right into the watch. So number 6, the flashlight, if you care about that, if it's something you'll make use of, honestly, that could be a deciding factor. And now that I've been using it for so long, it is for me. Now that we've gone through those major differences between these two watches, I just want to talk final thoughts and conclusions. Which one should you buy? And honestly, both watches are amazing in their own way. And some people are going to gravitate towards the Apple Watch Ultra, while others gravitate towards something like a Garmin Epix Pro. Neither of these are bad. In fact, these are 2 of the best on the market, and they're really hard to beat. I don't think you'll be disappointed with either one. I think if I had to summarize it, I would say it's something like this. Do you want a cellular connection, a huge library of apps to choose from, an amazing user experience, and you're someone that likely won't be running a 100-mile ultra or navigating on demand in the backcountry, and you own an iPhone and simply don't mind charging every couple of days? The Apple Watch Ultra might be the way to go. However, if you did want a more sport-centric experience where your health and wellness and performance goals are all prioritized rather than the smartwatch stuff, and you wanted more fitness tools out of the box without needing third-party apps with incredible battery life, incredible mapping and navigation, and you have an Android phone or an iPhone, and you don't need a cellular connection on your wrist, then the Garmin Epix Pro might be the way to go. That was pretty intense. Like I said, either way you go here, these are both incredible watches, and if I handed either one to you and made you use them for a week, you're going to learn to love them and work around their shortcomings because they both have some. Okay, I think we did it. If you're still watching this video, you probably enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, please consider going down and giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel down below because that really helps me out. Also, if you're planning on picking up the Apple Watch Ultra, the Epix Pro, the Apple Watch Series 8, the Garmin Fenix 7, the Forerunner 965, or just about anything else out there, I'll have links in the description down below that do help support this channel, but they cost nothing extra to use, so you might as well use them. And with that, I think I'm done now. I'll see you next time. Bye.